Did you know that some of the most impressive buildings in all of humanity are described in the Bible? Some were built with incalculable riches, others collapsed in mysterious ways, and there are those that, to this day, science simply cannot explain. In this video, you will learn about the 5 greatest biblical buildings, gigantic works, full of meaning, mysteries and stories that span millennia. And stay until the end, because the last building on the list will leave you speechless. Are you ready to embark on this incredible journey, where faith, history, and archaeology meet? So, let's get started. Noah's Ark. Have you ever imagined what it's like to build a colossal ship, without modern technology, without cranes, without chainsaws, just with wood, calloused hands and a lot of faith? Well, that's exactly what Noah did. And to this day, this story has spanned millennia, intriguing scientists, archaeologists, and everyone who believes in the power of divine providence. The Bible tells us that, in a time of extreme corruption, God chose a man for a mission that seemed impossible. To build a gigantic refuge to save his family, and representatives of every animal species from a global flood. Now, imagine the scene. Noah receiving this divine order, taking his rudimentary tools, cutting wood, fitting beams, building compartments. It was decades of hard work, under the scorching sun, facing ridicule, and carrying the weight of preserving all of God's creation. And the ark was not a simple little boat. Its dimensions were gigantic, about 135 meters long, 22 meters wide and 13 meters high. That is, almost the size of a modern cargo ship. And all of this, made of gopher wood and coated with bitumen, to resist the waters of the flood. But, how did Noah manage to accomplish such a feat, without advanced tools? How did he organize thousands of animals inside? And, was there really a flood so great that it covered mountains? Many people believe so. Geologists and historians have found traces of a huge flood in the region of Mesopotamia. Research suggests that thousands of years ago, a catastrophic event may have submerged vast areas, giving rise to the tradition of a global flood. And what is most intriguing, the supposed discoveries of the ark itself. In 1959, a Turkish pilot flew over Mount Ararat and identified a formation that resembled the hull of a ship. Since then, several expeditions have tried to confirm whether the remains of Noah's Ark are there. Some have found pieces of petrified wood, and structures compatible with a large boat. But, is it really Noah's Ark? Science is still debating. Meanwhile, the faith of millions of people remains unshaken. The city of Jericho. Imagine standing in front of a city surrounded by gigantic walls, so thick and strong that they seemed impossible to knock down. Now, think about the improbable, or rather, the impossible. These walls did not fall because of war machines, but because of the sound of trumpets and cries of faith. This is the incredible story of Jericho, one of the oldest cities in the world and the scene of one of the most impressive events narrated in the Bible. But, did this really happen? And what does science have to say about this spectacular fall? According to the Bible, Jericho was a fortified city, with very high walls that were insurmountable for the Israelites, who had just left the desert after 40 years of wandering. Conquering Jericho seemed impossible. But God had an amazing plan. He ordered the army of Israel to march around the city for 6 days, once a day, in absolute silence. And on the 7th day, they were to march 7 times, blow the trumpets, and shout. And then, the unbelievable happened. The walls fell completely. Now stop and think. How could this be possible? How could a simple march and the sound of trumpets bring down such robust walls? Throughout the 20th century, archaeologists began to investigate ancient Jericho, and found some impressive ruins. One of the most striking discoveries was made by British archaeologist Kathleen Kenyon in the 1950s. She found the remains of massive walls and, most surprisingly, evidence of a sudden collapse. The walls appeared to have collapsed from the inside out, and not as a result of an attack with battering rams or catapults. Just as the biblical account describes, it was not human weapons, but the power of God. Of course, some scholars have sought natural explanations. One of the most widely accepted theories suggests that an earthquake may have caused the walls to fall. Indeed, Jericho sits on a geological fault line, and earthquakes are relatively common there. So could it be possible that a massive earthquake at just that moment could have brought down the walls? But here comes the most intriguing detail: how could Joshua and the people of Israel have predicted exactly when an earthquake would happen? And what's more, how could this earthquake have occurred at the exact moment of the sounding of the trumpets and the war cries? Coincidence, or miracle? This is one of the great questions that Jericho still leaves for the world. The Temple of Solomon. Get ready, because the next construction is even more mysterious, grandiose and fascinating. Imagine a building so majestic, that its walls were covered in pure gold, where the sunlight hit and reflected a heavenly glow. A sacred place, built to house the very presence of God. This was Solomon's temple, the most extraordinary construction that Israel had ever built. But, how was it possible to build such a colossal work thousands of years ago? What does archaeology reveal about its existence? And, above all, what is the true spiritual meaning of this marvel? It all begins with Solomon, the wisest king Israel ever had. He received a sacred mission from his father, David, to build a house for God. The location chosen was no coincidence. The temple would be built on Mount Moriah, the same place where, according to tradition, Abraham almost sacrificed his son Isaac. The construction was a monumental project. Giant stones were carved with millimeter precision. And most impressively, they were transported to the temple without the sound of hammers or tools, obeying the divine order that the work be carried out in absolute silence. To adorn the temple, the noble cedar of Lebanon was used, one of the most valuable woods of the time. But what is most impressive, the interior was entirely covered in pure gold. Carved cherubs, palm trees, flowers, every detail revealed unprecedented care and devotion. In the center of it all was the most sacred place, the Holy of Holies. There rested the Ark of the Covenant, the ultimate symbol of God's presence among the people of Israel. After 7 years of hard work, the temple was finished. But, something even greater was about to happen. Solomon then gathered all the people of Israel for an unforgettable ceremony. Before the altar, he said a prayer, asking God to dwell in that place. And suddenly, something supernatural happened. A glorious cloud filled the entire temple. And fire from heaven descended upon the altar, consuming the sacrifices. It was a clear, indisputable sign. God accepted that house as his sanctuary. The Israelites, amazed, knelt down. They were before the living presence of God. A moment that echoes to this day, as one of the most impactful and sacred in all of biblical history. Tower of Babel. And get ready, because now we're going to explore one of the most impressive and mysterious constructions in the Bible. Imagine a world where all of humanity spoke a single language. Without borders, without barriers, all united in one purpose. To build a tower so tall, that it would reach the sky. But this ambition, which seemed grandiose, ended up awakening the wrath of God. And then, something unbelievable happened. Suddenly, communication between them was broken. And that construction stopped forever. But after all, what was the Tower of Babel? Did it really exist? What does archaeology have to say about this story? And, most importantly, what great lesson does this construction still teach us, even today? The Bible tells us that, after the flood, Noah's descendants began to spread out and populate the earth. But, at a certain point, they decided to settle on a vast plain called Shinar, in what would today be the region of Mesopotamia. There, using innovative technology for the time, bricks burned in fire and bitumen as mortar, they began to build a tower that, they said, would touch the heavens. But, it wasn't just an architectural work. It was a symbol of pride and self-sufficiency. Let us make a name for ourselves, so that we will not be scattered over the face of the earth, they said, Genesis 11 verse 4. They literally wanted to challenge God. But God intervened. Seeing human ambition override obedience, he made a radical decision, to confuse the language of men, so that they would no longer understand each other. Now, imagine the scene: a worker asks for a brick, but his colleague understands that he asked for water. The foreman gives orders, but no one understands him. In a matter of moments, chaos ensues on the construction site. And just like that, construction stopped. The people were forced to disperse throughout the world. And from there came the birth of the different languages and cultures that we know today. But, is this story just a myth? Or is there evidence that the Tower of Babel actually existed? Many scholars believe that the Tower of Babel may have been inspired by ziggurats, imposing, step pyramid temples common in ancient Mesopotamia. The most famous of these is enigmatic, a huge temple in the city of Babylon dedicated to the god Marduk. Babylonian inscriptions refer to this place as the house that unites heaven and earth. A name that is very reminiscent of the purpose of the Tower of Babel. Historical records indicate that enigmatic was destroyed several times, until it was abandoned. Could this be the tower mentioned in the Bible? There is no definitive answer. But the similarity between the descriptions is, to say the least, striking. Now, stop and think with me. What have you been building? Something for the glory of God, or for your own glory? If your desire is to build your life according to God's will, comment now. Lord, I want to build my life on you. The Temple of Jerusalem. A biblical construction that defies logic, and history itself. Imagine living in a time when your people were torn from their land, taken into exile, and saw the holy temple reduced to rubble. Would this be the end of their connection with God? No, for the Jews. When they returned from captivity in Babylon, they brought with them a dream. To rebuild the temple, and restore their faith. The Second Temple of Jerusalem was not just a building. It was a powerful symbol of rebirth, hope and identity for an entire nation. But, how was it built? What made it special? And, why was it, once again, destroyed? After 70 years of exile in Babylon, the Jews were finally allowed to return home. The Persian king Cyrus the Great not only authorized the reconstruction, but also helped with funds. But, when they began to build, they realized a harsh reality. The new temple would not be like Solomon's. It was smaller, less luxurious. Without the Ark of the Covenant. Without the shine of pure gold covering the walls. The elders, who still remembered the first temple, wept. For it seemed pale, in comparison. But God sent a message through the prophet Haggai: the glory of this latter house will be greater than that of the former, Haggai 2 verse 9. What did this mean? How could a seemingly inferior temple be more glorious than Solomon's temple? Centuries later, the answer came. King Herod the Great decided to expand and beautify the Second Temple. He transformed it into one of the most impressive structures in the ancient world. He doubled the size of the esplanade. He created a gigantic system of columns and walkways. He covered parts of the temple with gold and white marble. The result? A building that gleamed in the Jerusalem sun, leaving visitors in awe of its beauty and majesty. This temple became the heart of Judaism. It was there that Jesus taught. It was there that he drove out the merchants. And it was there that he announced that one day it would be destroyed. And that is exactly what happened. In 70 AD, the Romans surrounded Jerusalem. During the First Jewish Revolt. After months of intense fighting, they invaded the city and burned the temple. Historical accounts say that the gold melted and ran between the stones, prompting the Roman soldiers to dismantle everything to get the precious metal. To this day, all that remains is the Western Wall. A piece of that structure that still stands, reminding the Jews of its greatness and of the pain of losing the temple. The temple was the place of God's presence. where sacrifices were offered. And the people sought forgiveness and guidance. But then, something changed. Jesus came and brought a revolutionary message. Destroy this temple, and I will rebuild it in 3 days, John 2 verse 19. Now, think with me. If God wants to dwell in you, is your life prepared to receive Him? If you want to be a living temple for God, comment now. Lord, dwell in me. This was just the beginning. If you want to dive even deeper into the wisdom and mysteries of the Bible, don't stop here. Click on the video that is appearing on your screen now and discover the powerful lessons that Jesus Christ revealed in the Sermon on the Mount. What you are about to hear is not just another message. It is something capable of completely transforming the way you see the world, people, and even yourself. Don't miss this opportunity. See you there.